Hey guys, here we are, the Quiggin Out MMA Podcast, and as you can see, if you're watching, I'm joined by the 21st century John L. Sullivan, better known to anybody else as Tom Shoaff. How we doing, man?
I am doing fantastic. How are you, Mr. Quiggins?
Not too bad. I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up who that was. Just because
That's
I was
okay.
like, I feel like
Okay.
I should know a little bit about him, you know?
Considering your history with bare knuckle fighting, you're forgiven.
Oh, okay. Fair enough, fair enough. So, here we are, almost a year to the day of your BKFC fight with Julian Lane, which was painful to listen to and amazing to watch. So kind of walk me through like what you remember about that night and how it's kind of kind of changed because it changed your life. That's a fight people don't
Yeah,
forget.
absolutely. That was one of those fights that, looking back on it, was one of those fights that I probably never should have taken. But like you said, it kind of put me above it. It was a fight to remember. It was something that turned out to be, even though I lost, it was glorious in all fashions. I went up in weight and I met Julian at 170. And he was just the bigger, stronger guy. That was the long and the short of it. He came out like Julian comes out, and he caught me early in the first, and then he caught me again, and it was an uphill battle after that. And I spent every second of the remaining 4.5 rounds trying to battle back and get into a good position where I looked like I was in position to win, and then we ran out of time.
And those
But it
those
was a
two
good
minute
fight.
rounds,
It was.
they fly.
Yeah, those 2-minute rounds it's one of those crazy situations where when you're in, because I obviously have an MMA background, so I come from much longer rounds, and you never realize how long 5 minutes is until you're in a professional MMA fight. It's almost the exact opposite with the bare knuckle fights, because you're in there and it's 2 minutes and that round's over and you're like what? How is that round just over? Like, I barely just broke a sweat. Like, what's going on here? So it forces pace, it forces action, and I enjoy it, man. I thoroughly enjoyed all three of my experiences with BKFC.
So going with that, and I think the 2 minute rounds, do you feel like that was kind of like a disadvantage coming from the MMA background? Because like you said, there's so many fighters who kind of like take that first couple minutes sometimes to get into it, and
Right.
like at that point you're already down a round.
Precisely. And that's kind of a problem that I have is I take a couple minutes and I feel out the fighter, and because of that MMA background, I know that I've got, a 5-minute round where I can kind of work and flow and move and get a fighter figured out. You don't have that luxury in bare knuckle. You've got 2 minutes and you start from the scratch lines and you got to go. So I would say that definitely was a wake up for me, because I do start slow typically. So for me to reflect over the last year, on how things went and how I could have performed better, that was definitely one of the things that I've been working on, while I'm training, is not warming up to the fight, not warming up the first round, just being ready and going out there and ready to go from the first bell. Yeah, it was definitely a wake-up call for me.
Well, and I can imagine, like you said, going up in weight class typically doesn't go so well. We see a lot of times
Right.
where you're just not used to the extra weight, or you've got a guy who is used to it, and it kind of plays out a different scenario. So, what made you want to take that fight with Julian and make that decision to go up? Was it just taking that fight?
It was kind of twofold. One, it's Julian Lane. Like
I want to bang,
Julian Lane,
bro.
like everybody knows Julian Lane, so it's one of those situations where, when they offered me the fight, like the name alone is like, yeah, like that's something I would absolutely be interested in. But then when they said 170, I walk around about 170,
Mhm.
between 170 and 175. So for me, it was great. I was like, this is awesome. I don't have to cut weight. I can just keep my cardio up, train the way that I normally train. I'll be ready. I'll be good to go. But I fucked up because I knew going into the fight that I was going to be the faster man. But while I was training for the fight, I knew I was going to be the weaker guy. So a lot of my strength and conditioning wasn't so much conditioning, it was strength. Mm-hmm. So I was far slower than I had anticipated going into the fight, and you add on top of the fact that I start slow to begin with, and it was just, it was a recipe for disaster. But to bring this full circle back to your question, the reason that I went up in weight and the reason that it all made sense for me was because I walk around about 170 pounds, and it was Julian fucking Lane. Like, yeah, I'm gonna take that fight, absolutely. You know, that's the type of fight that I want to take. If you followed any of my professional career, which not a lot of people have, so don't feel bad. But I actually I've got 13 career wins, and I have 14 career performance bonuses. I put on exciting fights. Mm-hmm. So, you know, like even when I lose, you know, we get bonuses, you know, so it's one of those situations that I wanted a fight like that on my resume because all of my fights on my resume are like that. So it only made sense.
And that does make sense. And that being, you know, we talked about this. That was the first time I had ever experienced bare knuckle. I really wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, just because it is that raw. It is that, you know, primal.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
And being somebody who's watched the sport now for 12 years, I had never seen anything like it. And I remember sitting there in Tampa, or Plant City, whatever they want to call it, the fairgrounds. And I remember sitting there and hearing one of the first punches land on a skull, and I was like, that was horrific.
Oh.
And I mean, I can watch, but at the same time, like, Frank Mir breaking Nogueira's arm, I can watch that 1,000 times, and it still gives me the same reaction. And that's how I felt every single time I heard a punch land.
Goodness gracious.
And that was just, like, it's crazy really to think about it, because the 2 minutes, you know, the way it works, I didn't think Tampa was going to be a good venue to bring bare knuckle, and it did amazing.
It did tremendously, man. You know, they've got a lot of really tough guys in that South Florida area, and Florida in general. Everybody knows about, like, Kembo Slice and Jorge Masvidal and Dada 5000 and all those guys. But there is such a big community of backyard brawlers and bare knuckle fighters and just guys that flat out enjoy a good scrap in Florida. So to me, it made sense. The part that kind of threw me through a loop was the fairgrounds. Mm-hmm. But then I saw the venue and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
They did amazing with it.
I thought it was going to be like, when they said fairgrounds, I assumed it was going to be like it was in Mexico. And in Mexico, they did it in a baseball stadium, which turned out really well. I'm not downing the show in any way, shape, or form, but when I heard fairgrounds, I was thinking, oh, fuck, another outdoor show. It was 95 degrees at the last one. We're in Florida in June or July or whatever it was. You know, like, here we go again. But no, it was great, man. It turned out fantastic.
I think the second ever live MMA fight I went to was outside it was like a Mugs and Jugs. It was in the parking lot.
That sounds great. That sounds like fantastic.
It was Tilted Kilt. That's what it was.
Even better. Even better. Dude, I've been to a fair amount of shows that had their weigh-ins at Tilted Kilt, but I don't think I've ever had a show at a Tilted Kilt.
It was outside. It was hot. Well, it was February, so it wasn't as bad, but, you know, we did another show a few months later in June in Florida. Not good.
I do not envy you, man. Like I said, I live here in Oklahoma, and I work outside sometimes, and it drives me nuts. You know, I mean, I'm usually not this, I don't know, red. I guess that's the way. I am a thoroughbred white person. I grew up in the Midwest. I very rarely look this color. Yeah, see, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, so like it's to be outside and to be in the heat all day is miserable. To then turn around and do it at night for a show, it's tough. It's tough to put on a good show that way.
Well, absolutely. So, and I've seen some weird things. I went to a card once, and the people from the Swamp People guys were there.
Okay, all right. Yeah, the TV show.
And the fight card went from 9 fights to like 4. So the show was like an hour and a half max.
Yeah.
And it was in the parking lot of like a Family Fitness. So.
Oh yeah, cheap rentals. Why not?
Whatever works.
That's the best. Get a decent venue set up.
So
I had a buddy that wanted to run shows in a strip club parking lot, and I was like, count me out.
Well, before I forget, because you talked about working outside, if anybody follows you on social media, what happened the other day with your close call and the nail gun?
Okay. Well, here. I don't know. I'll see if I can. Anyway, I shot myself in the fucking leg with a nail gun. That's how that happened. So we were remodeling a doctor's office, and I was facing this direction, messing with something I don't remember, and my I don't know what you would call him, my boss basically. Mm-hmm. It was like, hey Tom, hand me my nail gun. So I was looking around, looking for it, and it was behind me. So I turned around and I reached for it like this. Well, his gun. Usually on a nail gun, it has like a safety mechanism where you have to put pressure on it before you can pull the trigger. Well, his safety mechanism broke. So as I turn and reach for the gun, my thumb hits the trigger as I grab the handle, and it goes off and shoots me right in my fucking leg. But if anybody knows anything about nail guns, they blow out a big burst of air. So I just felt a big burst of air hit me in the crotch, and I double over, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I think I just shot myself in the, and luckily it was just like, it was off and it was in the thigh, but it was an experience I won't forget for a long time. But that's what happened.
Sorry to bring that up again.
No, it's fine. Like it was an experience I'm sure I'll laugh at every time it comes up on my reminders every year. But yeah, I wasn't thinking, and I use this gun, like, I've been working with the guy for months. I use this gun all the time. I know it doesn't have a trigger, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't thinking, and grabbed it, and that was all she wrote. So that's what happened. I shot myself about that far from my manhood with a 3-inch nail.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a framing nail, 3.5 inches. I think they call them a 12 gauge or a 16 gauge, something like that.
That's nuts.
It was an experience.
Sorry for the terminology. I guess nuts would be a bad one to use.
I didn't even pick up on that, but I find it quite punny after the fact.
Dad jokes for life, man. Dad jokes for life.
All day.
So, I want to kind of talk about, before I get, into your backstory, but what I wanted to tell you was I remember being backstage after your fight with Julian, and it astounded me more than anything how many people tried to come up and give you fist bumps. And the look on your face like, are you serious? Like, look at my hand. Like,
it's so I love people and I hate people, and I think I just have learned to appreciate them after all of it, because it's like, that's one of those situations where they just don't think. It's like when people come up and shake your hand, and it's like, look, stop. Like I'll hit you with the elbow, but like a fist bump and a handshake are no-go for a week after a fight. And you're coming up to me 15 minutes later and wanting to, yeah, man, let's get. It's like, bro, stop. Yeah, that was an experience.
I just remember seeing that look on your face, like, I'm gonna be nice, I'm gonna be nice, I'm gonna be nice.
Like I said, at this point in everything, the only thing that I can really be is grateful. I I enjoy fighting, and I'm incredibly fortunate that I get paid to do it, and that people enjoy watching me fight. And that if that means that they want to come up after the fight and, you know, give me a fist bump, like, are they thinking clearly? No, but are they out to harm me? Absolutely not. So
No.
I can just show appreciation and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the one person who probably isn't all there after that is you. So you're like, come on, man.
You know, right. I tried to. That fight in particular was pretty rough, man. I had. I don't know what happened, to be honest with you, but after the fight, I went back in the locker room and I started to get real cold and shaky, and I had to wound up having to go stand outside for like 15 or 20 minutes in the sun, let like my body heat warm back up, or my core temperature come back up, whatever the case may be. But I was not in good shape after that fight, man. I took a lot of damage, and I'm fortunate that I made it out in one piece.
You landed that pretty sweet uppercut in the fist, so that was pretty nice.
You know, that was like my rally cry. You know, it's like, give me one more round. Give me one more round. I'm back in this. Not so much. What are you going to do?
Listen,
Like I said, it was a learning lesson, you know, and when you start slow and you start late and you don't come prepared, that's what's going to happen. So,
well, there's so many fighters that do that. You know, they've been in championship fights their whole life. You know, they end up in a non-title fight, and they're used to giving those, you know, 2.5 rounds to be like, okay, I'm getting into this, I'm gonna take control,
right.
and then they're like, oh
Right.
shit, I got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, it's funky, man, because we train for hours, you know, like we really do. Like when you're at the gym, it's like an hour of this and then an hour of, like, if we're training for an MMA fight, it's usually 30 to 45 minutes of grappling, 30 to 45 minutes of wrestling, 30 to 45 minutes of striking, sometimes even longer, you know, so we're training for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time. So you're used to that long-term endurance, hard burn, but it kind of takes you a little while to get there. And when you're in the back and you're kind of low on calories, or you haven't been eating as much as you should be, or you're nervous about blowing your wad before you get out there, you don't really warm up or train as well as you would in other circumstances. So it's kind of like playing catch up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just difficult, you know. So it's one of those things that you would think that I would have a better gauge on, you know, 12 years into this, but I'm still working on it.
And I can only speak from experience doing jiu-jitsu, having our last guard pass night and wearing a mask the entire time you're rolling.
Oh, goodness.
And you do 4 10-minute rounds, and it's basically like almost like a King of the Hill style. Like someone comes up, you pass them, okay, you go, next person, next person.
Yeah, we do something very similar.
At the end of the fourth round, I was laying face down on the mat. I was like, I am exhausted.
Absolutely, right. No doubt about it. Now imagine burning that much energy and having that much of an output in 10 minutes.
Yeah, right.
It's very different, you know. So it's one of those things that you got to train for, and you got to train for properly. And I'm learning that as I mature.
And I think that's, you know, fighting is something you either get or you don't. I don't feel like there's an in-between sometimes. It's like something, like you said, you have to be that person that's always ready to be learning. You know, even 12 years into it, you still have that mental awareness to say, I still have things that I need to learn.
Definitely, absolutely, yeah. I think it's twofold. I think it's definitely something that you either have or you don't, regardless of talent or drive or heart or hard work. Like, you can either fight or you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say on top of that, like you were saying, the learning process. You can't ever be in a position where you feel like you know it or you've got it or you've figured it out, because you haven't. So, like, you haven't, you never will. You can keep trying, and you might get close, but you're never going to have it all. So keeping that mentality in mind and not beating yourself up continuously because you don't have it all, it helps. It helps keep you in a good position mentally.
And I think that's a good thing for people going forward, or somebody who's wanting to get into, you know, becoming a fighter, because it isn't just, okay, I'm good at, you know, I can hold my own in a street fight, or I can hold my own here. You know, you've got to have that discipline, and you've got to have that, you know, take a step back and really listen to what other people are trying to help you with.
I think that, yeah, and I think that that's something, that mentality is something that crosses over in every aspect of life if you want to be successful, regardless of whether or not you're fighting or you're trying to be a carpenter or a plumber or a vet tech or, whatever. As long as you keep in mind that you always have to learn, you always have to get better, and that at no point do you know it all, and that you should be pretty good, and you should be able to excel and exceed expectations just because you've kept in mind that you probably don't know shit.
I think if everybody just walked around with that, I think the world would be in a better place.
Yeah, maybe. Way too many people feel justified in their opinion when it's just that. It's an opinion. And it's like, come on now. Slow down. Anywho, moving on. I don't want to talk shit about the world. I can barely keep my own house clean.
Well, you mentioned, fighting for 12 years, so I kind of want to go back to the beginning. Like, where did it start, and where did you know, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to try, and, what was that driving force behind it?
To be honest with you, man, I kind of got bullied into it.
Okay.
I'll start way back. I was like a freshman in high school, and I got in a fight with this kid. It wasn't even really a fight. I punched him one time, and hurt him pretty bad, and got put on probation.
Jeez.
So then I was the kid who could fight, but I was on probation, and then I couldn't fight because I was on probation. So then I got bullied. I got picked on all the time. Like, every day it was this football player, that football player, this fucking guy, that guy. So, like, I just got picked on. I got bullied from freshman year until junior year. 2 years of this shit. Well, from sophomore year to junior year, I put on 40 pounds and grew 6 inches. So junior year, I showed up at school fucking 6 foot, 180 pounds, and I was just smashing assholes, dude. I went after everybody. I just said, fuck it. Finally got to the point where I got expelled, got sent to like this alternative school, got kicked out of that school, and my mom was like, look, like, I don't know what you're doing, but like, if this is what you like to do, then be constructive with it. Figure out a career path. Do something with it, because school's obviously not working, and working a regular job obviously isn't going to happen. So try to do something. So just after I turned 18, I started training. I started training in January of, what would that be? 2007, roughly. Yeah. And I fought in May. I had my first fight in May of 2007, and the only reason I had that fight was because I was telling people I was training, and I was telling people I was a fighter, but I had never actually fought before. So people were like, well, hey, man, like, when are we going to see you fight? Like, well, when's this going down? So I was living outside of Chicago at the time. I got a fight in small town Muncie, Indiana, which is about an hour from Indianapolis. It's like as far away from Chicago as you can get to get a fight. And I won. I like I said, I just kind of stuck with it. I had a lot of friends that were fight fans that thought it was really cool that I fought. I had a lot of people who I had issues with in the past now suddenly had a different respect for me, so to speak, or fear, whatever the case may be. But I noticed that after I started taking strides to better myself, even though it was fighting, people kind of had my back. They were, they were on my side after that. So that was pretty much where it started. Like I said, man, I kind of got bullied into it. I got in one fight when I was young, and then I was the kid to beat up and couldn't defend myself. And then it was, well, now I've defended myself too much, so I need to do something constructive with it. And I turned 18 and started my amateur career, and I think I went pro
December 2012.
Yeah, that would be the one. So just before I turned 21, maybe 23? I don't fucking know. I'm bad at math. But yeah, no, I had a 5-year career, amateur career. So yeah, 23. And then I went pro. Yeah, December. Had my last amateur fight in November. Went pro in December, and then didn't fight again until September because I needed to take some time off. Like, that needed to happen. And I needed to get better. You know, like, it was one of those things where once you make that leap, there are a lot of holes that need to be fixed, and that was the time period to do that. But again, to bring this thing full circle, how I got started, man, was I was just a shitty kid. That's the long and the short of it. I was a shit talker, and you know, I wasn't very big. Like I said, I mean, I'm still only, you know, I fight at 155. It's not like I'm a big dude now. But when I was wrestling freshman year and sophomore year, wrestling at 145, and then coming in junior year and wrestling at 179, you know, like, yeah, it was a big change. And, you know, when you jump up 6 inches, it's like, all right, who wants it, you know? So, yeah, so that's where I got my thirst, so to speak, my first taste. And it's just kind of carried on from there, man. I've created a lifestyle out of it.
And I think that's probably one of the more interesting things that I've heard about how it got started. Because even your mom was like, you know what, if you're going to keep doing this shit, like, be productive. So,
right, yeah, like, do something with it.
Shout out to
and that
Mom.
was probably, yeah, and she comes to all my fights, man. She always has my back. She's always supporting me and making sure that I'm doing the right things and making sure that my career's on the right path. I've got good people in my corner, stuff like that. Like, my mom is absolutely my biggest fan, and I couldn't be more grateful for it. She's been there through everything. I mean, shit, since the day I was born. I've known her my whole life, you know? So she's been great, and I've been incredibly blessed to have somebody in my corner like that.
And I think that's really cool that she has been a driving force for that, because she had the control at that point to have guided you to a completely different direction. You know, that conversation could have been, cut it out, get a real job.
Absolutely. But, you know, the cool thing about my mom is she's never been she's always been one to think outside of the box, I guess you could say. You know, she's never been, like, restricted by guidelines. And she's always had to hustle. She's always had to, she's a single mother with 4 kids, you know, like, she's always had to make sure that her kids were fed and work, and you know, she's always had to hustle. So she's always been supportive of ways to make money legitimately that aren't mainstream. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I started getting into all of my nonsense in high school, that was right around the time that the UFC started to get big, and, you know, the Ultimate Fighter started coming out, and that was really starting to pop, and everybody was interested in it. So it was just, you know, all the stars aligned, and it worked out. She told me, you know, find a gym, stop fucking off, and do something with it. And, well, I did. Yeah. And here we are. Well, so, again, like I said, I've been incredibly blessed to have a forward-thinking mother like that didn't try to confine me to a box.
Yeah, absolutely. So shout out to Tom's mom.
Damn right, Mom.
So going through, you know, you had the 3 fights at Bare Knuckle. Haven't seen you fight since then. What have
I haven't fought since.
Let's say. So what have you been doing?
Well, I was looking to get, I'll do it. I'm going to talk a little shit about Bare Knuckle real quick. And it's not really their fault, but I'm still going to say it anyway. So I fought for them when I first signed with them, so to speak. They told me it was 3 fights. 3 fights, and then we would go from there. So the Julian Lane fight, I was sitting at 1-1, and basically I should have get off the pot time. Mm-hmm. I knew that, and I knew going into that fight that if I lost that fight, I probably wouldn't be asked back. Not because of performance, but because of record. You know, like, they want guys that win, and I understand that. Like, this is a fighting sport, you know, like, they want guys with good records. I get it. So I knew going into that fight that it was either way for me. afterward, when they told me that we got fight of the night, I sent David a message and I told him, I said, hey, you know, thank you for everything. This has been great. I've had fun. You know, I would love to be on a future card. Let me know if you're still interested in having me fight, so on and so forth. He said, absolutely. Things would, you know, everything would be wonderful. We're going to bring you back. That was in June. So we're going to bring you back in August.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right. I was on 2, 4, and 6, so I figured 8. We'd be, you know, let's just keep the pattern going. Well, August turned into September. September turned into November. Mm-hmm. November turned into early 2020. Early 2020 turned into February, and then March, and then all the nonsense happened, and now we're sitting in June, and again, it's not their fault. You know, like, things come up, they have new signs, they have the new signees, they've got new fighters. I understand the logistics of it. But don't keep me on the edge of a string just tugging me along when I could be going other places and making money. Mm-hmm. You know, like that is my career outside of my day job, which I make decent money, but it's not stellar. It's not bare knuckle money, you know? So It's like, it's not fight money, just plain and simple, you know? So it kind of pissed me off that they kept stringing me along like, oh, next month, oh, next month, oh, next month, oh, next month. And then with recent events, it's kind of been happening again. So it's like, man, like you guys are really starting to push my fucking buttons here. But the reason I haven't fought in a year is because I was kind of on this waiting list for BKFC, waiting for them to pull the trigger and send me a new contract, which was my own fault. You know, like they never gave me any guarantees. I can't put anything on them, but that's where I've been for the last year. I took some time off after the Julian fight. I took about a month off and let everything recoup and recover. I spent a lot of time working on my Jiu-Jitsu. So that's been fun. Back in December, I moved down to Oklahoma. I was living in Gary, Indiana. And then I got bit by a damn spider, and it put me in a hospital for 7 days. And yeah, ridiculous. So I got bit by this spider, put me in the hospital for 7 days. Basically went broke after that and moved down to Oklahoma and started over. Started working with my original boxing coach, the guy that I was working with 10 years ago when I lived down here. Found a new MMA team, found a new management. I shouldn't even say a new management team. Well, found my first and only management team thus far. Me and my old coach were basically managing my career before this. So, you know, what I've been doing over the last year is turning over a new leaf and preparing for the final leg of my career. I'm 31 years old and I've got miles on me. Like I was saying before, you know, I've had 13 career wins and 14 career performance bonuses. Mm-hmm. Like, my fights are action-packed, and I take damage, and I'm getting older. So I've got, if I'm lucky, 6 more years of this, you know? Like, if I really take super good care of myself, I can do this for 5 or 6 more years. So I moved to Oklahoma in December, and I've been working on pouring the concrete of my foundation so I can start building my empire. That's where Tom's been at for the last year.
I feel like we could just end right there because nothing is going to compare to that right there.
I'm glad you liked it.
It just reminded me of John Wick for some reason. I don't know why.
You know, I used to have long hair and a goatee, and, well, I worked at a strip club, so I had to wear a suit. But everybody called me John Wick, so I'll take it. You're just following right along with the curve, man. I'm with it.
That's fantastic. And so the next leg of your career, you said you have about 6 years left. It's kind of funny because I'm 31 too, so I was like, hey, check that out.
Perfect. Yeah.
I don't have the mustache skills.
You can grow it. It's okay. It comes with time. If it's any consolation, dude, this is about as much hair as I get on my chin and my jaw ever. So, you know,
it just gravitates. It goes up.
Precisely, it goes out really, but yeah, it's just, some people just don't have it, man. Like I couldn't grow that if my life depended on it.
Yeah, and this is like 3 days post cut. Like I think this was like Thursday evening.
Yep, no, not. This is a year and a half. That's what this is. That's all I got, man.
I always try to do. I was like, you got the Uncle Creepy mustache back there, and then Eddie Wineland with his.
Perfect. Eddie, I'll tell you what, Eddie is the reason I have mine. Eddie started the Mustache Mafia about 4 or 5 years ago, back when Uncle Creepy first started doing his. Mm-hmm. And it might have even been longer than that, to be honest with you. But Eddie and I used to do strength and conditioning together in Indiana. We trained together pretty frequently, things like that. So when he started the Mustache Mafia back up, he essentially asked me to join, and I could not say no. Like, yeah, right. It was the coolest mustache I had ever seen, and he made it work. So I grew my mustache, and I cut all my hair off, and I joined the Mafia because of Eddie. So I'll have to send him this video, and we'll chop this up, and he can tag it on his Instagram or something.
Heck yeah, man. So this event was the first live UFC I ever went to. It was down in Sunrise, Florida. And okay. I'm not going to name a name, but I was scheduled to do an interview with a fighter. So we got down to Fort Lauderdale or Sunrise at like 10 a.m. for a 6 p.m. card. So we got down there a little early.
A little bit, yeah.
So I'm texting this fighter, and he goes, "Oh, man, I thought you were kidding." He goes, "I'm not doing an interview today." And I remember going, "I hope you get knocked out." And he fought Eddie that night. And Eddie knocked him out.
Fucking fantastic.
And I just went...
Sounds like Jorgensen. Was that Jorgensen? It's probably fucking Jorgensen.
I didn't say it.
That's fantastic. I can appreciate the hell out of that. I actually talk to Eddie quite frequently about that fight because he according to Eddie, that was the best Eddie has ever been. So,
which is cool for me to have been able to see that.
I'm glad that it happened to a guy that fucking blew you off. Fuck him. He's an asshole.
And Eddie was actually one of the last guys I interviewed when I worked for the magazine before. And I did this great interview with him. And I think I'm going to start doing like the Lost Chronicles because the magazine went under before they ever published it.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. You should totally find that and renew it, bring it back out, and show people what they're missing, man. That's a cool idea. I like it.
Absolutely. Well, I've been lucky enough to be with Combat Press. It's now 6 years, which is crazy because they picked me up a few months after the magazine went down. I thought I was kind of done covering the sport. They reached out and they said, "Hey, we're looking for writers, and just send in some of your stuff." And so I sent in like 5 or 6, and they replied back within like 10 minutes. They were like, "All right, come on aboard." So.
You're in. Let's go. So, that's great, man. That's
going to start pulling out
some
of
these. Nice to have that kind of security,
And it's what I do. Like, what fighting is for you, this is for me. I have a day job. I wish I could do this full time, but anyone in the MMA media will tell you this is not a sport where you make a ton of money on either side.
Yeah, man. Oh, yeah. It's really not. It's one of those things that you got to do it for the passion. That's the long and the short of it. You got to enjoy it because you're not going to make a tremendous living off of it.
No.
Unless you're in the top tier. But, that's, I guess you could say that's the same for any profession or career. But there are certainly way better ways to make your money than fighting and or covering fights.
But like you said, you got to do it because you love it. And I do it because of the stories. Like, you and I have never had a conversation before, but I feel like we've been talking for years, so I really love that dynamic, and I know I'm going like fourth wall with this.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but yeah, there's a certain camaraderie inside the community. You don't have to actually be in someone's physical presence to understand their side of the story because we were all there. We all saw it. We all experienced it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I like that. That's a gnarly way of looking at it. I'm gonna have to hold on to that.
So you've got the 6 years left. Ideally, we don't want to put a timestamp on it. Are we going back to MMA? Because you said you were working on your jiu-jitsu. So I'm curious about that.
Oh yeah, like I got my brown belt a little over a year ago. I think I got it last December.
Okay.
Maybe before that. Yeah, so a little over a year and a half ago, roughly. And that's been like a big milestone for me. And I was really excited when I got it. I was really proud of myself when I got it. And then, it was one of those things that so anybody I don't know if you guys know this about me. You probably might not know shit about me, but I like to strike. I like to punch people in the face. That's what Tom likes to do. Even in MMA fights, like I don't really do precisely. I don't really do takedowns. I don't throw a bunch of kicks, knees, elbows. Not too much of them. I just want to punch. I just want to punch you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
But in MMA, it's mixed martial arts. You got to be able to wrestle. You got to have jiu-jitsu. You got to have all that stuff. And the further my career progressed in MMA, the more the glaring inadequacy in my grappling was showing. And I had to address it. I had to do something about it. So I took a step back and I decided, all right, I'm just going to train jiu-jitsu. I'm going to train my grappling. I'm going to get better, and we'll go from there. And it was right about the same time that I went to the Bare Knuckle show had their first show or BKFC had their first show in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
So I cornered AJ Adams on that card, and I had another buddy of mine that was supposed to be on that card. Two buddies actually that were supposed to be on that card. So I was out there dealing with the show as it was. I wound up volunteering to fight one of my training partners that night because they needed to fill the card, and it didn't happen. But they liked it so much that they pulled me onto the next card. So it worked out really well that I was still able to fight and make money and train my jiu-jitsu. So that's really where my BKFC career fell into, was I was able to train, I was able to fight, I was able to get better and still make money, but I was also able to do the things that I needed to do to get my MMA game where it needs to be. So then on top of that, I moved down here to Oklahoma because, like I said, I've got a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I've got a really good jiu-jitsu game. But my wrestling isn't that great. Like, I've got subpar high school wrestling. And that's, like, at best, So I came down here because it's fucking Oklahoma. It's the wrestling capital of the world, practically. And the gym that I'm at, it's called American Elite here in Oklahoma City. And the one thing that they do exponentially well is their MMA. They marry their grappling and their striking together really well. And that's the biggest hole in my game. So to make a long story longer, yes, I'm absolutely planning on getting back to MMA. That was one of the reasons why I picked up my new manager with TKO Combat Sports and management. They work with a lot of they work with a lot of UFC guys, a lot of Bellator guys, Legacy guys. They've got a really good stable of fighters, and they have what it takes to get me to the next level. So I absolutely want to get back to the MMA game. I absolutely want to get back into that realm. But I'm also at a point in my career where stupid fights don't make sense. So if they're not paying well, or if the fight just flat out doesn't make sense, then I'm not going to do it. And I've been fortunate to be in a position recently where I haven't really had to take many fights that don't make sense. I am in a position now where I just want to fight again. It's been over a year, and I'm rested. I'm recovered. I'm so rested. I'm anxious. I'm so recovered. I'm beyond recovered. It's like I'm over rested at this point. I need to get back to work. I need to get back to training, and I need to get back to doing things that I have been doing for the last 12 years. 13 years. That's what I want to be doing, and that's what I intend on doing. So, yeah, the next 4 or 5 years, 6 years are going to be filled with all kinds of fights. Boxing matches, bare knuckle boxing matches, MMA matches, anything and everything that I can get my hands on. Because, like I said, I don't have much time, man. I'm running out of time, and I need to fight. I need to make money. I need to do stuff so that so that I have enough money to not have to do anything anymore. That's really the goal, you know?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good way to look at it. And I think, 10 years ago to tell somebody, I'm going to bare knuckle, I'm going to box, I'm going to do MMA, they'd probably say you're insane. But also, 27 years ago, when the UFC came on, everybody thought that was insane. You look back at those first fights and you're like, this is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. I remember the first time I ever saw a UFC card. I was at Family Video. That's how long ago this story was. I was at Family Video, and I don't remember which card it was. It might have been UFC 1, to be honest with you, because it had that tall bastard with the kickboxing pants on. Karate. Anyway, so I see the cover, and it's a blue cover, and it's got a dude all flexed out with a belt, and I'm like, oh, wrestling! So I reach down and grab it, and I flip the back over, and it's a bunch of guys in karate outfits. So I'm thinking, oh shit, this is like a kung fu movie. I'm going to check this out. So I rent it. I go home, pop it in the VCR. VCR.
Kids, VCRs.
So I pop it in the VCR. We start watching it, and my mom comes in, sees it's like halfway through the second match, sees people just getting pulverized, and she's like, "What are you guys watching?" My stepdad goes, "Oh, Tommy rented it. There's a bunch of guys beating the hell out of each other." My mom freaked out and made me turn it off, and I never saw another UFC again until I was like 14 years old, 15 years old.
Oh, my God.
Pissed me off. Like I said, I remember my very first UFC experience. I thought I rented it from Family Video thinking it was a kung fu flick, and it was not.
No, we've talked about it on the show.
People thought we were fucking crazy.
We talked about it on one of the episodes before. I had a couple of my buddies on. One of the guys that actually brought me into MMA the right way. So we worked together at Best Buy, of all places.
Okay.
And I had told him, I had mentioned that I watched fights, and he was like, okay. He's like, come over to my house. I'm like, okay. Came over to his house. We'd watch Pride for like 6 hours straight. And he would go...
That sounds like a great 6 hours.
He'd be like, no, this fight's whack. No, this fight's whack. No, there's a good point in this one. You just gotta wait till halfway through. Like, he knew everything about the fights. Like, he remembered all of them. It was so crazy to me. And I remember seeing, like, Igor Varchenskin fight guys. And I was like, this guy's gonna get killed. I said, look at him. He's tiny. And I just remember watching that. So, I think the first UFC I bought a DVD, because it was a little bit later, was like UFC 48 or 46. I think it was 48, and it was Couture Liddell. It was actually, I want to say it was Chemo and Shamrock.
Ooh, even better.
So, and then I started buying them, left and right, because it was like at the movie stop, and they were like buy two get one free, and I'm like, okay. And I think it was the same thing. I've thrown one punch in my life, and I'm going to show everybody, as embarrassing as this is, how this went. So it was like 10th grade. Girl had just dumped me. Kid on the bus making fun of me. And I was just like, I've had it. And I got up, I walked up to him, and I went, and my hand opened before it hit him.
Oh.
And
you're just a typical soul.
And I looked at my hand, and I looked at him, and his face is like that face like, oh shit, I'm about to get punched. And I just went, I guess you're not worth it. And I just sat down like nothing had ever happened.
That's pretty fantastic. That might be better than my story. I gotta be honest with you. Like,
I don't know about that.
You gave him the poem of Buddha and just shut the whole thing down.
Walked away.
How very kung fu hustle of you.
Oh, now I'm getting all blurry. Oh, I was like, whoa.
So
I love
drink's affecting your computer. I said that drink's affecting your computer.
Listen, so I love that you brought up the brown belt, because I didn't know that. And it was a perfect segue for me to be greedy and talk about the fact that 2 days ago, I got my blue belt.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. Congratulations.
I've been on and off training since like 2013. And by on and off,
Okay.
I mean like once every few months. So, well,
I know your type.
well, so I did child welfare, and I didn't have time. Like, I never knew what time I was going to get off work. And then I worked at Red Bull, and I'd be getting up at 3:45 in the morning, and I'd be getting home at 7 p.m. at night.
Fuck that.
So I was like, like, in my mind, I'm like, I can't train. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. That's exactly how I would feel too. Fuck that. Like, I work 14 hours a day. Get out of here.
Yeah. And so last January, I was like, you know what? I'm finally ready to, like, I'm at a job where I can train. Like, the gym's like 8 miles down the road, so I really have no excuses.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, the first class I said, I want a blue belt by next year. And I was like, okay, so now I have purple belt 2023, I think is my next one.
That's a great goal, man. I'm glad. Did you reach the goal? Did you make it by the time you expected to make it?
I said blue belt 2020, so that was 2 days ago. So it's still like, I have the belt sitting on the table in the kitchen, and I walk by and I'm just like,
still crisp.
Yeah.
Freshly built. Yeah, man, that's great, man. Good for you. I remember my blue belt, and it was the most unofficial ceremony ever. I used to run a gym. I didn't really run it. I ran a lot of classes there.
Mm-hmm.
And my coach, my jiu-jitsu coach at the time, he showed up early for class, and I had just finished up with the kids class. He threw his gi on, and he was like, let's roll a few rounds. Let's see how you're doing. I literally had 0 stripes on my white belt at the time. I was training only MMA, was only in a gi like once in a blue moon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure, this was maybe like a year into my pro career at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would have made me a 6-year white belt. And
sounds familiar.
And so we started rolling around, and we rolled around for probably 10-15 minutes, and he got up and wiped the sweat and tied his belt, and he goes, buy a fucking blue belt. Turned around and walked away. That was the entirety of my promotion. That was all she wrote. So
that's impressive,
I bought a blue
man.
belt. Yeah, I bought a blue belt a couple of days later, and then it's all history from there, man. I made really good strides in my jiu-jitsu as far as belts are concerned. I went from blue to purple in less than 2 years, and I went from purple to brown in less than 2 years.
That's insanity.
So, yeah, I've made really good progress with my jiu-jitsu, and I'm really proud of it, man. And the gym that I'm at now, it's Ricardo Cavalcante affiliate, and the gentleman that owns and operates the gym has a lot of exciting things coming up for his progression to his black belt, and I get to help him with that, seeing as I'm one of 3 brown belts at the gym, including him. 4. One of 4 brown belts at the gym, including him.
Mm-hmm.
So us and the other 3 brown belts get to help him work him up to his black belt and do his testing and all of that other stuff. So it's another learning lesson that I get to look forward to over the next couple of months. It's going to help improve my jiu-jitsu that much further, and I'm really excited for it, man. Like, I never thought, like, I started training jiu-jitsu because it was a requirement for MMA, and now it's gotten to the point where, like, I just love training jiu-jitsu. Like, I'll throw on the gi and train in a gi before I'll train no gi.
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten that. I've fallen that far for it, fallen that hard for it, Even though I still, like I said, have all intentions to get back to MMA, like, I'm a gi fighter over a no-gi fighter any day.
Well, yeah, and I am too, and I think that's just because of lack of wanting to do no-gi, because I feel like it's like that moment from Talladega Nights where they're interviewing him for the first time, and he just keeps going. And he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
I don't know what to do with my hands. I did that at a wedding one time. Yeah, man. It was an experience. Anyway, yeah, I got caught off on the Talladega Nights. Where the hell were we? Gi versus no gi.
Yeah.
Yeah, like gi, I feel like gi, I feel like you can play more in a gi.
Mm-hmm.
there's vastly, like, the amount of techniques are vastly variated. They're different in all shapes and sizes and forms. There's so many different techniques that you can do, so many different guards you can play. There's a wide variety of things that you can really do and play with in a guard. Whereas no-gi, because of the recent leg lock implosion, has kind of turned into a one-trick pony. And that doesn't go as far as, like, competing goes, because I don't compete in jiu-jitsu. I'll be the first to tell you that. I haven't competed in jiu-jitsu in years. But just being at the gym and training with people, like, even in MMA, you know, like, we'll be in MMA and I'll have a guy up against the cage in a full clinch and he'll dive on my leg, and it's like, I'm gonna punch you in the face. Like, this is not a position. No. Just because we're a no-gi doesn't mean that you can attack my legs. Like, I will hit you. You know, so it's one of those things that I've noticed cross over dramatically into training, is everybody wants to attack the legs and everybody wants to play the waist down game, which is fun. But as far as variation in your style of playing, that's why I enjoy gi more, because it's just as likely that you'll wind up in a waist down battle as you will in a waist up battle, and that's what's fun about it. You know, I don't like going to the gym and working the same 4 techniques with 8 different people because everybody wants to attack legs, or everybody wants to play, you know, 50-50 guard, or, you know, whatever the case may be. You know, like, I like the gi because it's got more variation.
No, and I feel like you feel things differently in a gi.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wild, man. I always tell people that gi and no-gi have this really good yin and yang thing about them, because gi forces your defense to be impeccable. I mean, absolutely impeccable, because people got grip. They got shit they can hold on to, so you can't pull out, you can't slip out. You got clothes on, so you can't slip out of stuff. But your offense can get lazy for the exact same reason. You have things that you can hold on to. But you flip that over, no-gi is the exact opposite. Your offense has to be pinpoint, precise, and excellent, because you can slip and slide and move and maneuver in ways that you couldn't do in a gi. But your defense lacks for those same reasons, you know. So there's a lot of yin and yang to training both and to getting both sides of the coin, so to speak. But again, to bring this thing full circle, as far as playing is concerned, I'm all about the gi, just because I like to play, man. It's fun for me. When you do bare knuckle boxing, jiu-jitsu looks a lot more like a sport than a fight. You know, it feels a lot more like a sport than a fight. So I enjoy playing it quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think people just don't understand, like, just the mental benefits. Like, put aside all the physical side of it, but the mental benefits. Like, you walk into that gym, like, you're not thinking about what happened 5 minutes ago. You're not thinking about what happened 5 years ago. You're literally in that moment, and then at the end of the night, you're driving home going, man, I wish I would have done this, or I had a really good roll with this person, or, you know, something like that. So it's...
Yeah, man, it's a lifestyle, and it's life-changing. You know, it's not one of those... It's not one of those, you know, one of those lifestyles that can go either way, you know, like either it could be good or it could be bad. No, if you go to the gym and you train jiu-jitsu, your life gets better. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's fucking magic. I don't know why. But for whatever reason, like, you go to the gym and you work out that nonsense from the day in a completely safe and structured environment, and it's mentally healthy. Like, it helps your mind, it helps your body, it helps your soul. Like, it relieves tremendous amounts of stress. It like I said, if you go to the gym and you train jiu-jitsu, your life just gets better. Things just get easier. I used to teach a 6 a.m. class, and after, yeah, man, like, we do zombie classes here. We've got a 5 a.m. class now, and I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. Like, but anyway, I used to teach a 6 a.m. class, and we would be on the mats at 6. We'd do technique until 6:25, and then it's live rounds until 7, sometimes later. Yeah, so it's 30 minutes guaranteed live rounds. And after class is over, it never failed. Every time I was like, all right, guys, jiu-jitsu's done. The rest of your day should be easy. Because it's true. Like, if you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you got people trying to choke you to death by 6:30, nothing else in your day is going to faze you.
Nope.
Nothing else in your day is going to be difficult. And that's one of that's one of the great things about jiu-jitsu. Like I said, it just makes your life better, regardless of, or I should say, beside the fact that it's incredibly healthy for you and relieves stress. Like, it makes you tougher in the real world because you've put you know that there are situations you can survive. There are terrible situations you can be stuck in and make it out of, and that confidence carries over into other levels of your life, and it makes your life better, man. I'm a firm believer in that.
Well, and what you said about magic, if no one else believes this, take a room, take 10 people, and let them train. Within 5 minutes, they're going to be within 3 inches of each other. Every single time. Everybody gravitates right towards the middle.
Absolutely. No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. It's something special, man. It's a great thing. It has saved me in numerous ways, and I couldn't be more grateful for the path that I'm on, man. Even though I got bullied into it, it's worked out pretty well.
I mean, that's like the best bully story ever, though. Like, oh, I guess I'll fight. Like, I guess this is okay.
Yeah, like, why not? We'll just see if I'm any good at this. Which is ridiculous. But anyway, yeah.
So, last but not least, I want you to tell me your favorite thing about John L. Sullivan. Because we're not going to just think... Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot, man.
Okay, I can give you two. Two things about Mr. Sullivan. Probably three. But they bounce off of each other. The first one would be John L. as a whole. His persona and his lifestyle was the archetypal man's man. He worked at a farm. He worked on a steel mill. He did any number of ridiculous amounts of jobs. He drank like a fish, even during training camp. Like, got so bad that his wife would have to lock him in the barn. Like, I don't know if you know Scott Burt or if you've talked to Scott Burt or not, but Scott Burt's got some excellent stories about John L. But anyway, like, his lifestyle as a whole was just rugged and hard and difficult. And I appreciate that, like, I'm a firm believer that there's no progress without struggle. And that man struggled, and he's gone down in history for it. And that's something to be commended for. I appreciate the hell out of him for that. The second and most obvious would be the mustache. Like, the man's got a stellar mustache. It's fantastic.
I'm looking at it right now. So.
And I would say the third man is got to be the fact that he had 3 bare-knuckle fights. 3. I'm pretty sure he had over like 100 boxing matches.
Jeez. But
he only had 3 bare-knuckle fights. And he's known as the bare-knuckle king. Like, how cool is that? So it's just like the man's legend speaks for itself. And if I had to break it down into what I like or respect about him the most, besides his mustache, would be just his all-around character, man. He's a guy who came from nothing and literally got his name in the history books as the best and baddest of all time when he only did it 3 times. Like...
Well, and looking at his boxing record, dude was 47-1, 47-1-2, with 2 draws and 1 no contest. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. Like, he's like I said, that's less fights than I thought he had. I thought he had more, but anyway, more of those stories.
Well, that's all that's documented.
The guy was just. He was a tough guy, just plain and simple. He was your archetypal man's man. And as somebody who grew up without a father, I can speak from first-hand experience that somebody who just portrays the
machoism, like...
Yeah, just like the ideology of what it is to be a man. For like that's I look up to it, especially considering the guy went down in history, not for being like a brute or for being, a chauvinist or, anything like that. Like, he was an athlete. He was a competitor. He was a guy who struggled and he busted his ass, and now he's gone down in history as one of the best ever. And that's what I like most about John L. Sullivan.
And that's perfect.
And then, of course, the mustache.
Well, yeah, I figured the mustache had something to do with it. I didn't want to think that was the only thing that came with it. But...
No. Yeah, no, like I said, man, he's a commendable human being, and he should be commended for it.
Well, I learned something new today. I hope everybody listening learned something new. Go look up John L. Sullivan. You won't find his fights on TV because, it's...
they didn't have cameras. Well,
he was fighting
what I'm saying.
The
Video
late
cameras,
1800s to the 1900s.
Yeah, man. That's a different generation. And the cool thing about him, this is another information that I didn't know. Sorry to keep everybody listening for longer. But that gnarly mustache that he had, he would shave that off before his fights. Because people, because people were dirty back then and they'd pull on it and shit. So, anyway, he was a mustachioed less man when he fought. Which makes the mustache that much more impressive.
Yeah, it really does. That was one of the reasons, like, training, I try to keep the beard down, because somebody gets a guillotine, I'm tapping from beard hair getting ripped out. So.
If you let it get long enough, it's actually quite the submission defensive.
Yeah.
Like, rear naked chokes and guillotines, I'll tell you what, I fought a guy, Tyler Combs. I had that dude in a head and arm triangle and 2 or 3 rear naked chokes. Couldn't finish him. He would just tuck his chin, and I couldn't get under the beard, man. It's just that extra technique.
That's good to know for any, My whole goal was to compete as a white belt. So when I got my belt, I was like, damn it, now I'm going to have to compete as a blue belt.
So now your first competition is going to be at blue belt?
Yeah.
Well, best of luck.
Yeah. We'll figure out when that's going to happen. It won't be anytime soon, because... Those 2 months off.
That's you get in there, man. Get in there. I tell people quite a bit because obviously I do a lot of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
You can have you've had no competitions as a white belt and now you're a blue belt. You're going against blue belt competitors who have been competing their entire time as a white belt. So it's like, even though you guys both have the same belt,
mm-hmm.
you are at a huge disadvantage because they have way more competition experience than you.
Mm-hmm.
So. Find some smaller tournaments and get in there and get used to that, man, because it goes a long way. It goes a long way when you're developing your game.
Oh, absolutely. So I appreciate the kind words because, like I said...
happy to help, man.
Other than,
one dude to another.
Other than, like, the few guys on Facebook and a couple friends, I was excited. Even my professor said, oh, you're going to talk about getting your belt on your show, aren't you? Like, it doesn't matter who you talk. Like, I could have talked to anybody, and I've been like, hey, by the way, I know you didn't mention this, but I got my belt. Like,
oh, you have to do it, man. You have to do it. Like, that is an accomplishment that very few people will ever achieve, ever. Like regardless of how small the fight community is, the amount of people that actually train in the fight community is even smaller. Mm-hmm. And then you take that to the level of people who actually proceed through belts. Like, that's even smaller, man. You have done something that a very small community in the population of the world has done. So you should absolutely be proud of that and tell everybody.
Absolutely. So with that being said, Tom, this was an absolute pleasure. I got through the whole show without stuttering. Now I'm like,
That's okay, man. That's okay.
So, as the shirt says, I'm too busy quigging out,
Yeah, I like it.
So thanks to Epic Jits Tees. I always got to thank my sponsor. You can actually get one of these shirts at their website. Use the promo code QUIGS for a discount. Check out his other stuff. I love that Tiger King is probably the most normal thing that's happened this year, and there are a couple cool things on the site with that as well. Thanks to Combat Press for giving me this platform. And Tom, thanks to you, man. This was... I always say this was a great show, but I mean, really, the concrete foundation, building your empire, I think was probably one of the coolest things I've heard, and I really appreciate it, and I hope we get to talk again soon.
Thank you very much, man. Man, that means a lot. And whenever you want me back, man, you just let me know. I'm available, and I would love to be here and do this again. Thank you for having me.
I think I need to have the Mustache Mafia so I can get Ian, we can get Eddie, and we can just make this, all you guys making fun of me for not growing a mustache.
I think we should do that. I'll reach out to I'll reach out to Eddie, you reach out to Ian, and we'll try to make this happen.
Oh, I definitely could make it happen. Episode 1 of the show, I got the other John Jones, the one who everybody mistakes on Twitter.
Really?
So he's got a pretty awesome mustache, too. If you do @John Jones, I got him, and I got a Daniel Cormier, who's not Daniel Cormier, and another guy. So that for me, the show is, I just want it to be fun. I want people to have a good time, and, some of these stories you told today, it's great stuff. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your appreciation, man. Thank you very much. You're very kind.
No problem, man. Thanks a lot.